Look at a map, any map. You see borders, colors, labels. You see names. France, Brazil, Egypt, Mongolia. You have seen these names your entire life. But here is the thing nobody ever tells you. Every single one of those names came from somewhere. A person, a mountain, a tribe, a god, a mistake. And when you learn where they came from, the map never looks the same again. Countries get their names in four main ways. Some are named after people. Some are named after the land itself. Some are named after the people who lived there. And some are named after something nobody even fully understands anymore. Today, you are going to learn all four. And by the end, you will never look at a country name the same way again. Let's start with the most personal category. Countries named after actual human beings. Bolivia, a landlocked country in the heart of South America. Today, it has over 12 million people, centuries of culture, ancient ruins that predate the Inca. And its name? It comes from one man, Simon Bolivar, the general who led the revolution that freed much of South America from Spanish colonial rule in the early 1800s. When the country declared independence in 1825, they named it after him. Not after the land, not after the people, after one man who fought for their freedom. Bolivar himself apparently found this a little embarrassing. The Philippines follows the same pattern, but the story is darker. The islands were named after King Philip II of Spain in 1543 by the Spanish explorer Ruy López de Villalobos. Philip never set foot on the islands. He was sitting in Europe when someone decided to name an entire archipelago of over 7,000 islands after him. The people who already lived there had their own names for these places. None of those names survived the colonial era. Today, over 100 million people live in a country named after a foreign king who never visited. Saudi Arabia is more straightforward. The Al Saud family has ruled the Arabian Peninsula for centuries. When the modern kingdom was formally unified in 1932 under Ibn Saud, the country was simply named after the ruling family. Saudi Arabia, the Arabia of the Saud family. It is one of the only countries on earth literally named after a family, like a piece of inherited property with borders. Now let's move to the second category. Countries named after the land itself. Iceland and Greenland are the most famous example of this, and the story behind them is one of the great geographical jokes in history. Iceland, the island covered in green valleys and fertile coastlines, was deliberately named Iceland by a Norse settler named Hrafnafloki in the 9th century. He had a terrible first winter there and named it after the sea ice he saw in one of the fjords. Greenland, on the other hand, is 90% covered in ice. It was named Greenland by Eric the Red around 985 AD, supposedly to attract settlers. He needed people to follow him there, so he gave it an inviting name. One land was named to warn people away. The other was named to lure them in. Both names stuck forever. Argentina comes from the Latin word argentum, meaning silver. Spanish explorers sailed up the Rio de la Plata in the 1500s, heard rumors of mountains made of silver somewhere to the west, and named the region accordingly. There were no silver mountains. The rumors were wrong. But the name Argentina, the land of silver, remained. An entire country named after a treasure that did not exist. Montenegro, the small Balkan nation on the Adriatic coast, simply means Black Mountain in the local language. The name refers to Mount Lovćen, a dark peak that dominates the landscape. The Venetians called it Montenegro. The name never changed. Sometimes the land names itself. The third category is the most ancient. Countries named after the people who lived there. France comes from the Franks, a Germanic tribe that moved into the region after the collapse of the Roman Empire. The Franks were not originally from what is now France. They came from the east, crossed the Rhine, and slowly took control of the territory the Romans had called Gaul. By the time Charlemagne rose to power in the 8th century, the Franks had given their name to the entire region. The people who were already living there, the descendants of Romans and Celts, gradually adopted the identity of their conquerors. Today, France is one of the most culturally distinct nations on earth, but its name belongs to a tribe of outsiders. England follows the same logic. The Angles were one of several Germanic tribes, alongside the Saxons and Jutes, who migrated to Britain after the Romans left in the 5th century. They came from a region in what is now northern Germany called Angeln. Their land became Angleland. Angleland became England. The Angles themselves as a distinct group eventually disappeared, absorbed into the broader population. But their name remained attached to the island, the language, the identity. Iran is one of the oldest country names still in active use. It derives from the ancient word Ariana, meaning land of the Aryans. Not in the distorted 20th century sense of that word, but in the original ancient sense, referring to the Indo-Iranian peoples who settled the region thousands of years ago. The name Iran in some form has been in use for over 2 millennia. The country changed rulers, religions, languages, and empires. The name endured. The fourth category is the strangest. Countries whose names come from sources so old or so debated that historians still argue about them. Egypt is a perfect example. The name Egypt does not come from the Egyptian language at all. Ancient Egyptians called their country Kemet, meaning the Black Land, a reference to the dark, fertile soil left by the Nile floods. The name Egypt comes from the ancient Greek word Aegyptos, which itself may have derived from the Egyptian phrase Hoblit Kapta, meaning the temple of the soul of Ta, which was the name of the ancient city of Memphis. So Egypt is named after a Greek mispronunciation of a name for a temple in a city that no longer exists. That name traveled through Greek, then Latin, then into every European language, and it became the name of an entire civilization. Canada is another mystery. The most widely accepted explanation is that it comes from the Huron-Iroquois word Kanata, meaning village or settlement. When French explorer Jacques Cartier arrived in 1534, local people used the word to direct him to their village. Cartier thought they were naming the entire territory. He wrote it down. The word spread. An entire country, the second largest on Earth by area, may be named because of a simple misunderstanding between a French sailor and a local guide pointing toward his home. Brazil almost certainly comes from the Brazilwood tree, a tree that once grew abundantly along the coastline and was enormously valuable in Europe as a source of red dye. Portuguese traders named the land after the most profitable thing they found there. A country of over 200 million people, the largest in South America, named after a tree because it was useful for making red fabric. Look at the map again. France, named after invaders. Argentina, named after a treasure that did not exist. Canada, named because of a misunderstanding. Egypt, named after a Greek mispronunciation of a temple's name. Bolivia, named after one man. The Philippines, named after a king who never visited. Every border on that map has a story behind it. Every name was spoken for the first time by someone, somewhere, for a reason that made sense to them in that moment. Some of those reasons were pride, some were mistakes, some were political, some were greed. You have been saying these names your entire life. Now you know where they came from. And the map, the same map you have always known, is suddenly a completely different place.